Okay. We are unfolding into a very profound theme this year. And I just want to remind everyone that it will be normal to feel intense emotions and energies as we start doing this work, because our goal is to go into the places in us where the energy has been trapped. And that energy is basically frozen in time. And we are going to work this year on thawing out these places where the energy has been frozen. And as the energy thaws out, the intense feelings that were contained in these energy blocks will require to be felt. It's like old expression, you can heal what you can feel. You know, what you feel, you can heal. If we are able to remember things, but it is purely mental, there is a dissociation. And this is something really cool I want to talk about tonight. Well, to me, it's really cool, but the splits that we have in us, these splits that create this dualistic reality that we are literally bathing in all the time, that leads to a lot of suffering because everything is chopped into two pieces. Things are chopped into two halves, and then you're walking around looking for the other half, when the reality is that we're all integral and holistic beings, and we live in an integral and holistic universe. It's very painful to be in a dualistic mindset about life, about ourselves, about others, about, you know, anything that shows up. So, yeah, right, I've been waiting all day for the download. Now it's coming in too fast. Of course. There's this really interesting concept I want to talk to you about before I go into the source downloads, which is, what if the concept itself of time is caused by dualistic thinking? That's a question to ponder. The concept of there being a past and a future, as opposed to just an eternal now. What is the past? So this is where it gets interesting, is that your memories are the only thing that keep the past together. No memories, no past. What we call these energy blocks, these wounds, are the parts of our consciousness that got frozen at a certain moment and is still stuck over there, wherever that happened. And in many ways, that is literally what time is. Just need to do something. That is literally what time is. The parts of your consciousness that are frozen in specific moments are what create for you that feeling of a past. This extends all the way to ancestral stuff, the past of humanity. Like, it's like, if you start looking at life like this, it gets a little bit freaky, because it's like, it is the unresolved traumas and energy blocks that it created, whether it be in our field or the collective field, that instigate this concept of time. But not only that, but that instigate that it keeps repeating itself. It keeps repeating itself. It's like a cycle, you know? It's like the cycle of a wound as well. You know, you work on something, happens, and then something else happens and it triggers it again, and something else happens and it triggers it again. And it's like, you can't see it, but what's happening is you're stuck in the past but you're reliving it in the present. There's something profoundly incredible to realize about that. That's a little bit disturbing and also very, very freeing, because if we as a group can work on melting these crystallized parts of our consciousness that are trapped in a memory, every time we're able to do that for ourselves, we are freeing the energy in the collective unconscious. We are freeing the, stuck patterns that are repeating themselves over and over again. If I give you the example victim bully as an archetype, that has been repeating for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years. What happens if we're able to bring new energy into such dualistic understandings and actually bring them back into unity? We are literally freeing humanity by doing that. We are freeing, like we are undoing the binds that humanity and our own minds are stuck in. That's some pretty intense stuff. So I want everyone to understand what I'm talking about when I say something's frozen in time. Even the concept of you having an inner child in you is really just parts of your consciousness stream that have been frozen in moments where you experienced fear. And it's frozen there and it's stuck there and it cannot undo itself. It's not able to. It's really important to understand that. So I just want to explain quickly like how a block forms so that it's easier to understand why it can't just move on its own. And we need to, it's not go back in the past, but we need to retrieve that energy in order for it to flow and be able to come back into the flow of the present. So how an energy block forms is, and a lot of them form when we're younger. They can, of course, form when we're older, but generally speaking, the ones we form when we're older are just fortifying the ones from childhood, because most of these patterns are formed by the time you're 8 or 9 years old. So as a child, your energy system is young and immature. Your mind as well is immature. It's not evolved yet. It's not refined yet. It's very, very dualistic in nature. And that's okay. That's if when you're 2 years old, it's okay that, that feels good. That doesn't feel good. That's perfectly fine for a 2-year-old brain. So as a child, something happens and it scares us. So what happens when this could be like as much just like, I don't know, like a book falling down or something much more traumatic, like someone screaming at you. I just want to talk about the basic anatomy of it. You feel fear in that moment. Your physical body in front of fear will always do the same thing. There's a quick inhale, and then you hold your breath. That's what the body does when there's something fearful that happens, something shocking of any form. So your physical body does that. Quick inhale, and then no breath, and then you go in a limbic reaction. You go in some kind of survival reaction. Next month, we're going to have fun. I'll talk about the 3 of them and how they look different, so that you get really, really good at knowing like, oh yeah, that's my sequence. I go in that one first. If that doesn't work, then I go in the other one, then that one. But just for tonight, what I want to say is that moment happens, whatever it is, your physical body has that moment of like, inhale, hold your breath. And in that moment, when you are holding your breath and you're lower brain goes into survival mode. What happens in your energy field, which is where the actual blocks are, what happens in your energy field is that there's a separation that happens between your mind and your feelings. And it's instantaneous. It's instantaneous. We do not have control or power over this in the moment when it happens, especially when we're like 3. So physically, something happens, hold your breath, energy field, all of a sudden the flow, just the natural flow of energy coming in and coming down from the divine and up from earth, flowing through your chakras and your subtle bodies, the flow stops. It stops. And the way that creates a separation between you experiencing the event at a mental level and you experiencing the event at the feeling level, because your body wants to protect you from that intense feeling, because it's very, very scary for the physical body to feel an intense emotion. You know, terror being the most intense, but even like sadness, anger, whatever, like, and in that moment, there is a dissociation that happens. The feeling gets repressed and the mind goes in overdrive. Most of us are in this state most of the time without necessarily realizing it. But that's the anatomy of a block. That's what it looks like. There's a split that happens. And that is literally what leads to duality. That's what leads to a dualistic perception of reality. And your defense system will do everything it can to make sure that you don't feel that feeling. That feeling is way more intense than any other feelings you put on top of it after. And that's the weird part. Our egoic structure as an unhealthy, unevolved consciousness has no issues going into a story about what happened that generates feelings that it feels much safer feeling than actually feeling the real feeling. That was the trauma. So I want us to get really good at, I'll tell you right now, the more you can map out and understand how that happens in you, what happens when you get triggered, the defense structure gets triggered. It's full of irrational reactions and feelings. None of these are the actual core wound. None of these are the actual feeling that happened at the moment of the trauma. They're kind of like, I would want to describe them a certain way right now. This sounds a little bit harsh, so I'll I'll refrain. Everything we want to do, the way we heal our energy field, the way we bring the creative process back into its proper flow, where energy can come in, we can create, energy can come out, right? We expand creations, then we bring that energy back in. The reason it's so hard to bring it back in is that there's blocks. And these blocks are like, everything about them is trying to protect you from feeling the original feeling. And we want to be so tender, so tender and caring as we approach these energy blocks. I was talking about that last time. Like, we're not going to go in there. We're not going to go plow through the defense structure and go into that feeling. And no, it's some of that would almost be enough to almost like break your psyche, you know, like our mind has done everything that it can to protect itself from breaking. So we're going to be very soft and loving in this process. 2 weeks ago, I was like, we're not going to go in full force. We're going to do some double balls and then the line and then open the heart. I think I might add a little bit that again tonight, but I want to continue this same idea of like, right now we are prepping the terrain. We are setting up the requirements that we will put on this process so that it is safe, so that it is deeply loving, so that the parts of us that we will be releasing, it's not parts. This is really tricky to talk about because they're not really parts of us. They are crystallized memories that are stuck in a loop and are spinning on their own, and they are not able to stop. So it's a little bit tricky if we talk about that like it's parts of us, because as we go into these energies and we bring back together the mental memory and the physical feeling and emotion and bring them back together by bringing new energy into them, these will dissipate. So if we're looking at this like these are parts of us, then it's very easy for, my ego used to do this to me all the time. It's very easy for the part of you that is afraid of healing and of becoming whole because it doesn't get to have a life of its own anymore. It's really easy for that part of you to be like, well, you're killing these parts, you know, you're hurting these parts. If they don't get to exist anymore, how do we process this if they're actual parts of us? Can you understand for your survival brain how that would be like dangerous? The truth is, these are crystallized memories. It's really weird to talk about this because it's like what you think is your inner child in many ways is just a bunch of memories that are spinning in a repressed feeling. It's like it can show up to us when we do work as, oh, it's like the 4-year-old me and it's crying and da. And yes, okay, that's true. It's true that that visual is showing you in the past who you were when that happened. But you, the sovereign spiritual being that you are, you're not in there. What a weird kind of concept to try to work with. And of course, having these energies in us that are unresolved and unevolved parts of our consciousness, and the fact that there is your mind doing everything it can to protect you from feeling what it feels is dangerous to feel, will lead to split intentions. And then like the hairline gets affected by that, right? Because then you have an intention of like, yes, I want to love, but I don't want to be hurt. So then it's like, we're wobbly, you know? And the issue with emotional energy being trapped in a memory, it's trapped in it, but it's disconnected. So you're aware of the memory, but you're not able to fully feel the emotion of that specific memory because there's a dissociation that happened. The issue is that that emotional energy is the energy that you use to fuel your creations. And that energy that's trapped in there is used to fuel that energy block. And it's like a spinning thing. It spins. It can't change its direction. We have to bring new energy into it. New energy that then allows the memory and the feeling to come back together as a holistic unit. And of course, for our protective, for our survival system and for our defense structures, that sounds really scary, Let's not kid ourselves. And at the same time, let's not overblow the whole thing. Because the truth is, most of these feelings, if you accept to fully feel them by feeling totally safe with doing that, are not that huge. They're not as big as they've been made to be. The reason it's so hard is because of it's something called hard pain as opposed to soft pain. So let's say you're like, okay, oh, that wound came up. Okay, I'm going to go work on it. And then you try to work on it. And then the whole story pattern comes on. Oh yeah, but what's the use anyways? Because nobody fucking loves me. And and now you're hurting yourself with all these things you're adding on top of it, which are built by the unhealthy ego. And then you're kind of like you're adding new levels of trauma onto what's going on instead of just actually going into the feeling. The feeling when you were 3 years old doesn't sound anything. It doesn't sound anything like the blah, blah that's getting put on top of it that's making it hurt even more. So what we want to do is bring some presence and some joy into these places in us. And this isn't like, oh, okay, you're a sad girl. Let me bring you some joy and then you can be a happy girl. It's not the goal of what we're doing. Our goal is to free that blocked energy so it can become available to the entire system of you as a sovereign being, you as a healthy, sovereign, adult self. Question might arise, so what about the inner child? It gets really tricky because it's like, I don't really think it exists at the end of the day when you have processed and felt all of these emotions, when you have brought every part of you back into the present moment, fully in the flow of divine energy and celestial and terrestrial energy, and everything's flowing and you are fully present and you are able to flow with life and grow and learn. All these qualities that we attribute to the inner child of awe and fun and playfulness and all that, these are your natural states of being. Do you see the duality once again present between an inner child and an adult? A childlike part of us that wants to play and an adult part of us that knows it needs to do serious work. That's what if it all becomes one thing? What if the goal is to bring all the energies that we call parts of us, all these energies back into flow? As all these energies come back into flow, whatever we thought were parts of us in there cease to exist because they're back. They're back in the integrity. They are back in our structural integrity. And this leads to the last thing I want to talk about before I start going into the downloads is, I'm sure you've heard the expression before, forgive and forget. We've all heard that expression. And for the ego, it's kind of like, whoa, 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 I'll forgive, but I won't forget, because or else you'll do it again, kind of thing. What if, as we release these trapped energies in us, which is very, what is forgiveness really? Forgiveness is freeing yourself from what you're holding on to. Forgiveness is freeing the energies that are trapped in your body, reliving a trauma. I'm not even talking about forgiving anyone. This is about forgiving ourselves for having forgotten that we're sovereign beings, for having forgotten that this was all a playground, that we chose to come in duality to transcend it. What if when we truly, fully, and completely forgive, i.e., release something, it no longer exists? Forgive and forget takes on a whole other meaning if you think about it like that. You forget it because it doesn't exist anymore. You forget it because the energy that was trapped there, creating a memory, has been brought back into the flow of the eternal present moment. For me, I'm like, wow. Wow. All right. So that's essentially the download of information I want to give before we go into an energy process right now. We are continuing our process of preparing. We are preparing our system for the work that we're going to go into throughout the year. I really want you to understand, this is going to be a process, and we're going to take our time, because there's no use in re-traumatizing trauma. We want to stop doing that. No trauma has ever been resolved by trying to force it to open up. But if we come and hold space and understand the process that we're in and how our defense structures react, so that we can witness it and have space, have the space that we need to see, like, oh yeah, okay, tung, 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 okay, that's going on. And this is what that would normally lead to. I have space now to see that. If you have space to see it, you're no longer stuck in that reaction. You are no longer that reaction. You are what is observing it. That's the place we want to get to. We want to get really good at being like, it's about to kick in. Oh, I can feel it. And boing, 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 boing. The four steps of what it's going to do that are going to lead to feeling X way. Then we can start actually like, oh, okay. Pattern interrupt. Turn around and actually hold the wound. Whew. All right. Dissociation, separating thoughts and feelings. That's what we are going to hone in on tonight as I start doing the work with source energy for the discernments. If this calls to you and you're hearing this video on YouTube, I recommend you come into the program to play with us.